Hi, everybody. Welcome to the MakerKit podcast. We're joined by Kazanski. He's the founder of Sherpa, an application hosting platform built with MakerKit. Hi, Zach. How's it going?
Going well. How are you, John?
Very good. Thank you. You are a MakerKit customer who bootstrapped his SaaS, and you went from being the CTO of a fairly large company who exited to private equity to being a bootstrap founder. Do you want to share a little bit with us how you made this transition and how you got where you are now?
Yeah, I'd love to. So right now I run Sherpa.sh, like you said, and that is a platform as a service. And we help developers ship their applications across the world using their framework's best practices. It's especially good for teams who are strapped on resources and need to execute quickly and can't afford the big expensive clouds like Vercel or Netlify, or the DevOps team required to manage a AWS where you can get a bunch of startup credits. Getting there was through being in the hosting industry for a very long period of time. But the company I was at before this is called Velocity.net. It was and still is, and it's a great company, a dedicated server hosting company. We operated 2 data centers in Tampa, Florida, where we were founded. And then we had 40 other data centers around the world in various cities. Any major city you think of, we had servers there. And I actually started my career there as a unpaid software intern. I basically begged and pleaded my way into the door. And then over time got more responsibility. And to the credit of the CEO and CTO at the time, and the owners of the company, they were incredibly open to new ideas and people who could execute on them. And so just over time, I became a developer and the manager of the developer and in charge of the product. I got involved in our M&A process. And then when we were going through the sale, I was involved in all the conversations there. And then ultimately ended. The way I transitioned from there into Sherpa was recognizing this huge price differential that exists. We had customers at High Velocity. I'll name some that are on the website, but like the NFL, Tencent, iHeartMedia, and a lot of these big, large media companies, as well as big SaaS companies, Browser Stack, would be spending a huge amount of money on AWS, and then they would move to a dedicated server and the bill would get cut sometimes to a tenth of what they were paying. And so there's this really big, and then we're making good money on this ourselves. So there's this huge differential in the cost of the physical compute that exists in the market. And so then if you go a layer up from the metal, you have the platform providers, you have Vercel, you have Netlify, you have Heroku, Render, Railway, all these companies, right? And they're wrappers on top of AWS. So they're paying AWS, getting a little discount and charging margin on top, right? So now you have this giant differential between the actual compute getting used and the service you're receiving. So the idea for Sherpa, well, why don't we just cut out the middleman of AWS and build this service on top of the metal here and for everyone the best price possible.
So in a way, the mission is similar. Basically, we're getting screwed over by AWS, and even more if we go with Vercel, Fly, and other hosting platforms, Netlify. I think it's also not the cheapest, but probably Sherpa is more geared towards indie hackers and smaller players that are currently overspending on these hosting platforms, me included. And you offer a non-serverless deployment platform that is fairly priced for everybody.
I will say we're not serverless, we're serverful.
Server. Yes. Do you think serverless is a bit of a fad, or do you think there are use cases where it's actually useful? And what do you think, for example, a Next.js application like MakerKit, where it's more appropriate to host it?
Yeah. For the serverless question, it's, in my opinion, and this is just one person's opinion, it's best tool, right tool for the right job. Right? Like if you have individual functions or your team is distributed in a way where managing individual functions makes more sense, those individual functions need to scale up and down in an incredibly cyclical or unpredictable way. A lot of gaming companies have that type of pattern, right? People get off school and want to like play whatever game. So you get huge spikes and troughs of traffic. So something like that probably makes a lot of sense for serverless or one-off little functions you need to run every once in a while. But if you have a full application with lots of functionality, relatively steady user base or steadily increasing, the overhead and complexity and costs for serverless just doesn't make sense, in my opinion. And you have the argument of scale down to zero. You could do that now, serverful applications inside Kubernetes, which is what we do. So there's no, if you're like 80% of apps out there, you could probably just do a server and be fine.
Yeah.
And I would imagine 80% of MakerKit users are building SaaS applications that are going to steadily increase in the revenue and users they have and would not necessarily need serverless in order to support their user base, which honestly it means it's a big opportunity. It means they can look at different places to host their services. And if they're bootstrapped, finding something that allows them to iterate extremely quickly, but keep more money in their pocket to fund growth seems to be the like best thing to do. And there was nothing like that when I started Sherpa.sh. And the goal was to become that platform.
Yeah. I think that right now 90% of users that use MakerKit are probably using Vercel. The ease of use is undeniable, but it comes at a cost later on where people who need a queue background jobs or they need a cache like Redis, they have to go to external services. That's true that also Vercel now offers them, but there's also the the cost is always too high. The markup that they receive is always many times over what you would get by just simply self-hosting it probably. And Sherpa would allow you to deploy any other application, right? Any Docker container.
Yep. So the way our infrastructure is set up, we have a connection to your GitHub account. We auto detect what frameworks inside of it, whether it's Next.js, Vue, Svelte, or Docker. Then from there, we detect changes, trigger deployments. Those deployments, we build a Docker container and we deploy that to our Kubernetes that horizontally scales behind a load balancer. And then we put the CDN in front of that with the proper cache headers, cache control to make sure you get the best performance all around the world.
I have to say, Sherpa is probably the most ambitious project that I've seen built on MakerKit.
Yes.
Because yes, I found it unbelievable that you are bootstrapping such a complex, ambitious project without funding by yourself, or do you have collaborators with you?
Yes. So I'll say it is funded. It's just funded out of my bank account. And then
Yes.
in terms of collaborators, yes, I have 2 collaborators with me right now, and we use a handful of contractors around the world who help us with various pieces. And I'll say 2 things. One, like MakerKit makes it very easy as a solo founder and bootstrapper. The amount of overhead and work I would have had to do to get started, it cut out tons and tons of time, and let's get the market faster. Second, the amount of work you do. I don't know if you have people either. You're doing it by yourself too, I think. But the amount of work you do,
99%, yes.
yeah. So like we can leverage that, and that helps us go faster. Also, like all the work you're doing right now on the MCP servers, the AI rules, is going to be a huge benefit for us as well as everyone else who ends up using the MakerKit platform. And that's the other secret, is that we founded this company in the middle of the AI boom. So a lot of our operations internally that typically require a lot of people for an infrastructure type of service, we are actually able to augment and do with agents and MCP servers that would be a real pain and really expensive otherwise. And so we also believe that as time goes on, we're going to become more and more efficient using these tools, whereas legacy dinosaur hosting platforms are not going to be able to adopt the AI as quickly. And we think that's going to be an advantage that's going to let us drive our prices down even further because our costs are going to be dramatically lower from AI making us more efficient.
Yeah, so I was really skeptical of AI at first. When someone would, bring up AI in the Discord, I would roll my eyes and be like, no. I think now, probably 9 months later, it's quite clear that AI is having an incredible impact for everybody, me included. I have been using it quite extensively to build Supermode, the latest product at MakerKit. I think 50% of code was built with AI, and I shipped it in 2 months while working on MakerKit as well. So the amount of work was incredible for having it shipped in only 2 months, and I could not have done it without AI. So I was wrong, it turns out. It does look like AI, it's helping you with a relatively small team for the kind of applications that you're building compete with the likes of hyper-funded companies like Vercel and Render and Railway and others. One of my questions, since this is such a complex fit, how do you compete with these bigger companies having no external funding?
Yeah, I mean, that's challenging, right? They have a lot of things going for them. They have the venture backing, the unlimited war chest. They have built-in ecosystems, right? Like if you've ever gone to NextComp, you see all the companies there. They have control over the frameworks and hide variables and disable functionality. And when you self-host, that makes it very difficult. We actually have a blog post we published recently on how to actually self-host Next.js at scale. It's on our website if anyone's curious.
I've read it. Very nice.
A lot of reading to get that written of Next.js. But yeah, so how do you compete with all that? I think we do the exact opposite. If you want to talk to support at Netlify or Vercel, good luck. And even if you're spending a lot of money, good luck. We have customers that came from them because they upgraded to the enterprise plan, got locked into a contract, and support was like, you're locked into the contract. We're not gonna talk to you. I'm in the MakerKit Discord. I'm in our Discord. Our team will talk to you. We'll help you directly. So that's one piece. The second piece is at the end of the day, price, right? People who, especially if you have high bandwidth, moving off of Vercel onto Sherpa.sh, you can reduce your bill by 80%. Right? If you're spending 10 grand a month on Vercel, you can move to us and spend 2 grand a month. That 8 grand a month, that's 96 grand a year, you can put towards growth for your company. How much more value are you going to get out of spending that on growth versus spending that on operations? So that's another reason. Then I think the third reason is or the other way we compete is I think there's an untapped market. If you look at the last 20 years, there's been like $12 trillion in SaaS revenue generated every year. That's like a fifth, I think, of the GDP of the entire world. 54% of that is in the US, right? And of that 54%, almost all of it is in San Francisco, right? Netlify, Ender, Vercel, Roku, they're all literally based in SF, backed by venture. And if you look at that money that's been generated by SaaS, the limiting factor to that is the actual cost of the infrastructure. So there's companies that exist or could exist in places all around the world, right? That just don't because the infrastructure cost is too high, right? Like a local SaaS app in Taipei, where you are, right, is going to have different unit economics than a local SaaS app in Silicon Valley, right? So if you can figure out a way, which is what we're trying to do and are doing, to drive down the price of the infrastructure and the price of the operations around managing it by providing a platform as a service, all of a sudden, all these SaaS companies that could exist in places all around the world, right? In Taipei, in Brazil, Argentina, in Nigeria, Indonesia, all places where we have users and customers. All of a sudden, there's these SaaS companies that can exist. And so there's this huge untapped potential around the world that all of a sudden becomes possible if you could get the prices to a point where the unit economics make sense. And that's the same thing for NGOs, for research software, or for basically any nonprofit that is trying to do something and needs a SaaS product and or system. The infrastructure costs are limiting. So if we can remove that barrier, I think we can unlock a huge market that a company like for sale couldn't target because they're going to have to reduce their prices, and they'd have to eat into their margins, and they have to make their investors very upset. Revenue was going down. We're counter positioned in that regard. And I also think it's just if we could get to the scale that I want to get this to, it'd be a net good for the world, because now all of a sudden, everyone has access to creating affordable software and affordable software companies.
It's also true versus economics right now are not making much sense, I think. And I can see their pricing going up and up and up in the future. Said you are renting metal from data centers and also your applications there directly. I think on Reddit that all the data centers that you are renting basically in the European Union. I don't know if that's still true. Is there a reason for that?
So there's two reasons. First, our underlying providers right now are European based or EU based. And reasons. One reason is they're the most affordable, and we know how to get the best prices there, right? So like that's reason number one. Reason number two is going to move the entity to the EU for a variety of both personal and business reasons. I won't get into the personal, but the business reasons are there is no EU-based platform as a service, right? And you could disagree or agree, like politically, right? Focus on privacy, on data security and retention, on carbon neutrality, like all of these things align with my personal values. But platform like that doesn't exist. And so instead of having to pick one of the 6 different companies that are all based in Silicon Valley, all backed by more or less the same venture capital firms, providing an alternative, not just in terms of price and performance, but in terms of the actual values that the company holds deep to them.
Yeah.
It makes more sense to be there versus in the US.
Yeah, the States. As a European, I was fascinated and surprised by this statement on Reddit. So I was curious to know. What I was thinking is it's probably privacy reasons and GDPR, probably because you might have a bigger client in Europe that requires it, obviously.
Both of our customers are also in Europe. So that's also
They're also there. So yeah, that's another reason. Talking of customers, one of the hardest thing for Bootstrap founders is to find the first 5 or 10 customers. Advertisement is very expensive and doesn't work that well. You cannot pay TechCrunch to feature you unless you pay a lot of money. So I think one of the things I'm most interested in my customers to talk about is how did you find your first customers?
That's always the hard one, right? For me, I guess the first thing to talk about is the framework for thinking about it. I really like the book Traction by the founder of DuckDuckGo. I think Gabriel is his name, but he has the bullseye framework, right? Where you think all the different ways you can market the product, pick a couple of them, test them, right? And do it cheaply, do it fast, do it correctly. And then if one of those works, just pull down and just stay on that until you get as many customers as you can from it, until it's saturated, and then repeat. So that's kind of the idea here. The different ways we tried were ads on Reddit, ads on YouTube, partnerships with starter kits. And then we looked at like content marketing and like going to conferences. And we tried a variety of these things. And in terms of what actually worked to get initial customers and traction was people building with tools like MakerKit, right? Where you're a bootstrap founder, you want to go fast, you need as much revenue as you can staying in your pocket to grow. We align with all 3, we help with all of those things, right? So it makes a lot of sense for users of starter kits to deploy on top of Sherpa.sh. And then it also provides value to the people using the starter kits, or the starter kits themselves, because now you can offer a platform that helps your user grow. Bigger companies are on top of MakerKit and they can say, hey, we're building on top of MakerKit and look how big we are, right? Look at these things that we've been able to accomplish because of this particular tool. And I just think there's a lot of synergy there. So that's one that's worked really well. And then the other one that's worked really well is we ran ads. I was a meme engineer for a few weeks and we're making memes all day, and the paid ads worked and it drove traffic, it drove customers. It drove some relatively large MRR customers. And so we said, okay, like we really need to double down on this. So now we have a whole process.
Can you share which channel?
Which what?
Can you share which channel worked the best and which one it didn't work at all?
Yeah, the channel that worked the best was Reddit.
Reddit.
Reddit only works the best for us. The channels that didn't really work were like the indie hackers website. Like just there's not enough interaction or community there right now, at least for us. What else didn't work very well? Ads on like YouTube, PPC ads don't work at least for our stuff, don't work very well. Reddit really works. If you get in there and you actually care, it's like, yeah, step number one, you actually have to like go in to help and not just talk your stuff. But if you're willing to do that, which is like, again, one of our core values, then I think you can get a lot of mileage out of Reddit, coupled with producing content that actually helps people, like our self-host next guest. It's counterintuitive to our product, right? Like we'd rather you just run it on us, not self-host it. But people want that, so we shared, and then you do that coupled with ads. I think you can drive a lot of traffic and conversions for whatever you're building, assuming your customer base is there, et cetera.
Yeah.
Et cetera.
Yeah. I tried Reddit. It was awful. It didn't work at all. I mean, it was my first time setting up ads, so I might have messed up something. But in general, selling to developers via ads sounds to me quite hard. I have to try it with Supermode still, because it's a very different product. It's not really meant to be purchased by a developer, but by more like senior management or CEO that wants to basically work with the database without having to learn SQL and Supabase Studio and all that kind of complex thing. So it's in my to-do once we reach V1 to use it, to try it out. YouTube surprises me that you got bad results. I wonder if you switch from doing ads to doing content. It's true that it's so expensive making videos in terms of time, so time consuming, but it's kind of becoming the go-to channel for organic traffic, since now Google's with AI, my traffic like a third of what it was 3 years ago, which is funny because there's more content than before. What do you think about YouTube? Do you think in the future you could try to bring traffic from there?
I think videos will or could work. It's on our list of things we can try, right?
Mhm.
For us, it definitely drove organic traffic and signups. There's a lot of signups. It just never drove conversions. And, depending on what your goals are, right? Like if your goals are just drive signups, drive free users, right? And convert them later, then that would have worked for us. But we're more focused as a bootstrap team on immediate revenue generating channels. So maybe in the future, something like that, where we can spend more time nurturing top of funnel, then it would make more sense.
Yeah. Makes sense. That's something I think about every day right now, where to find new customers, because I'm a little bit afraid that organic traffic through Google is going to be less and less. That seems to be the trajectory at this point.
Yeah. I've always thought, well, not always, but recently thought that the bot coders could be a great market for MakerKit. Like we said earlier, you have all this great AI rules and MCP servers and agents built into it. It's almost incentivized to make it really good for AI because you're one guy, right? So there's like a limit there for at least in my experience, vibe coding, right? With a Lovable or a V0, like you can get like something really basic, really quick. But if you want, you want to add like all the stuff required for a SaaS, right? MFA, adding users, teams, billing, like all that stuff. No way you're going to get that tool to make it. It almost makes sense that the foundation for your vibe coded app should just be MakerKit, right? And just slap that into Lovable. You can't, but like slap it into Claude Code or Cursor or whatever you're using and go from there. And I really think that could be a channel to, or maybe even a new market's a better way to describe it, of users and customers for MakerKit that might be worth tapping into. And then they can deploy it on Sherpa.sh.
It's true. It's interesting because when Vibe coding kind of started, I don't know, probably 9 to 12 months ago, there were many people purchasing MakerKit who were people who had never written a line of code before. They started with tools like, I think Cursor was the first one. And unfortunately, that was quite bad for me, despite the revenue bump from these tools, because these customers were just, at the time AI was not that good yet. So these customers became a large support load for me, and they would have a lot of questions and nothing made sense to them. But unfortunately, they were led to believe that AI could solve all their problems, and that's just not the truth. Even if you have never read or written a line of code, it's just really hard to start with these tools. Even using the command line, which is fundamental, ABC, is hard to them. So I remember one of the first customers, which I was very confused. Why did you buy MakerKit if you're not a coder? Also because I added to the FAQ, it's like the first question: do not buy MakerKit if you're not a coder. I had back then. And they were like, AI, I can do anything with it. And I was like, maybe in the future, not right now. Instead, now there's a lot of vibe coders who are having a lot of success with MakerKit. I'm sure that there's a learning curve, but at this time, with the latest frontier models like Sonnet 4.4, Codec, GPT-5, they're having actually a good time building with MakerKit. It's leading me to believe that this new market, there's something there. If you asked me 6 months ago, I was like, no, this is not going anywhere. Please don't buy MakerKit because it's not gonna go well. But things are changing. I can tell. There's many vibe coders, self-proclaimed vibe coders in the community who are building SaaS. They have customers. It's quite amazing. And I still think that some customers are better off with Lovable and Bolt if they've never written a line of code. But that's a good way to start. Start with those tools maybe, and then learn a little bit of how code works, learn to use a terminal, Git, super important, and then lean into these more professional boilerplates like MakerKit or others. And I assume it's going to be very similar for you as well. A vibe coder who buys a $20 plan but cannot deploy anything is probably going to blame the hosting platform. But now maybe with AI, they are more independent and can do more by themselves.
Yeah. So first plan is $13, not $20.
$13.
We do have vibe coders who deploy on top of us. My 8-year-old daughter vibe coded 2 video games this weekend.
Wow.
And then posted them at Orma.games if you want to go play them. And
yes.
Those are...
Post it in the community. I'd love to check it out.
Okay, I will. And those are deployed on our platform, right? On Sherpa. But we have other vibe coders too. And yes, there is support sometimes, but I think you have to skate where the puck is going, right? Like go back a year, both of us, you and I, didn't think what is happening now is possible. And we're just scratching the surface. It's going to keep going, I think, at least. So 2-3 years from now, what you're going to be able to get done with AI is going to be dramatically more than what it is now. But if you could plug into the ecosystem now and be that foundation, I think MakerKit would be a great foundation for vibe coders. And I think that's the play. And it's the same for Sherpa, right? If the cost of producing apps is going to drop to nothing or near nothing, people are going to need places to host them. Like the only options in the world can't be a bunch of VC-backed companies in San Francisco. You need alternatives, and that's what we're going to be.
I also want to emphasize that if you're a vibe coder and you're having fun vibe coding, it's going to be so much better if you learn a little bit of coding, because it's going to remove a lot of the frustrating parts when the model just cannot fix an issue and you just go and do it yourself. It's going to be so much better. I know how frustrating it can be to try prompting and it just doesn't work. I've done it. I went myself in, I fixed the code, and it removes a lot of frustration, because then eventually the model will get it right, but it needs your help to drive it. So I think that's very important. Yeah. And what advice would you give to fellow founders who maybe haven't found the right idea yet, or maybe they haven't found any traction?
Yeah, I guess The first thing I would say is that all advice is useless because it's dependent on context. But at least people that I know personally and from my experience, you really want to try to validate the idea before you write code. Um, Ideally, that's someone giving you money. Like I've had people for previous projects I've worked on write checks before. The check was to see if it was possible, right? That's how you know you have a problem that people really care about. That said, that's not how I did Sherpa. I started writing code for Sherpa because I knew that the market was huge. I knew there was no alternative. I also had 10 years of experience in the industry. So I knew all the unit economics and the customer base and how people use the platforms that existed. So I kind of knew that was going to work. So I don't know if this is good advice or not, but like try to validate first, try to get at least a few people paying you or at least committing to pay you before writing code. Or alternatively, go super fast and spend as much time on marketing and finding customers as you do on writing code. I guess the other thing is don't be afraid to ship something that has holes in it. Like your first iteration is not going to have 100% of the features that everyone wants. Like for custom managed databases. I have to say we're not doing managed databases right now. We're focusing on the app deployment experience and making it as feature complete as possible for all different use cases that people have. And you have to be okay with not having everything there and knowing the journey going to take time, right? So ship sooner, market more, and get people to pay you before you write code. That's probably what I'd say.
I think that's great advice because I think that what we're probably all a little bit guilty of at some point in our India career is to spend 6 months, 9 months, 12 months building without telling anybody, without validating. Maybe we're scratching an itch, which is fine if it takes less than 2 or 3 months, because I don't remember who said it, but we don't have that many 6, 9 months in our lives. So I think that, yeah, I agree with everything. Just to add my experience to this super mode, I did not validate it. I never talked to anybody about it, but I did receive emails from customers asking me if MakerKit did that. And the simple question was, no, it did not. Like this, what I mean, in MakerKit it's simple, doesn't do that much. So I thought there is something there. It's something I would use, super cool, and there's no alternative out there. There are some CMSs, but they're know if it's going to make money. And yes, I have something that makes money on the side, but it's still a long time to build something. So my rule, at least, is 3 months. If in 2 or 3 months I cannot build that product because it's too complex, then it's either not the right product or it's too much on my plate, which means you can reduce the scope by a lot. People don't care, because if you solve one problem, if you solve that well, that's the product. Anything else is extra bonus, right? There's a lot of products that do one thing very well and make a full-time income, which I think is everyone's goals. At least it was my goal when I started MakerKit or my other ventures. So yeah.
How long ago did you start MakerKit?
I started it in 2021, I think. So it's been a while. There was an issue in the beginning because I bought the domain, I had the kit ready, but Google did not index my website for and I was like, what's going on? And then I go on Google and I find out that traffic kept rising for the past month, and then it just started on its own. I have to say that I started doing SEO content as soon as I deployed the website, and as soon I didn't have a product ready yet. I think it took 3 or 4 months for me to have the courage to sell code, which is really hard, because if you're a developer, you care about other people's opinion of your code. You're like, oh my god, they're gonna see how I name this function. They're going to be, it's like a collective PR review of all your code.
We're all looking.
I think developers can relate to this. It was very hard to put it out there, I have to say. But then one day probably I put it there, I forgot about it because I was like, nobody's visiting the website. And then one day it just happened. That is funny. That's a cool story. When I think about it, I was already, I had a different product going on. I'm still the co-founder of Shopify Analytics SaaS, which is in business, makes money for us. So I was focusing on that while all of this happened behind the scenes. So yeah,
that's really cool. We did like distribution first, right? That's another thing probably. For what it's worth, that was great.
Thank you. It was a new fear unlocked when you put some code up there, and it's something people pay for. Zach, I think we are at the end of this interview. Thank you so much for coming. I think there's a lot to learn from you, from your journey, from your ambition, because Sherpa is, as I said, I love what you built. I think it's something incredibly challenging. Props to you already, because I think it's already a success. Having customers in such a crowded and tough and complex space is already a victory. And I'm sure you will grow a lot in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the foundation to build on and for maintaining it and making it easier for us to continue. And just the time today, giving me the time to talk to you and share what we're working on. I very appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Zach. Bye.
Right. Bye-bye.